Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of August 2022, and if you haven't caught it yet, Ben already posted his August wrap-up on this background because he's here visiting me and he had the unfortunate confusion of thinking that it was July, but you should definitely check out his video and some of the stuff that he read while we were together in the UK, and now we're together in Canada for the month of September for the most part. But it's my turn to talk about all of the things that I finished in the month of August, and it was a pretty good month. It was pretty productive. I think I read 7 things. Yeah, 7. So 5 of those were physical books, and then I had 1 each of an audiobook and an ebook. And so I am gonna kind of go, usually I will go in order of my ratings, but in this instance I'm just gonna go in the order that I read everything because it was a bit of a hectic month and I think it just makes the most sense to talk about my progression that way. So the first book that I'm gonna start with was actually my Patreon buddy read, or not buddy read, sorry, but my patron book pick for the month of July, and I just didn't quite manage to get it finished in July because the end of July was my birthday and just a lot of like hectic life stuff with like switching shifts at work and very busy time basically, and so I finished this on like the 2nd of August. I was very close but just didn't manage to fit it into July, and not purposely, this is actually my lowest rated book of the month, and that is Canada by Richard Ford. And so this was picked for me by Mallory, and normally I would feel a little bit bad about rating something 3 stars and not really loving it, like when someone purposefully picks it for me, but I know that Mallory picked this because it's called Canada, and I do love her for that. It didn't end up being really for me, but this is historical fiction, and that's another thing, is that Mallory is very into history and is in school for history, and so I do like, this is not her like era of history. This takes place in the 1960s in I believe Montana, and this is about a 15-year-old boy, Dell, whose perspective we are following, and his parents commit a bank robbery, and instead of being picked up by child services, he is like sequestered across the border into Canada by some people that his parents knew. And the honest fact of it is that not very much happens in this book. Like, you would think it sounds exciting. His parents rob a bank, and in the future of this book there are murders, and like that is told to you from the first page, and it's just very introspective. Like, we are very much in this 15-year-old's head, and some of it was interesting, some of it was not, most of it was not. The thing that I will give to Richard Ford, though, for sure, is that he is a good writer. I did enjoy the writing. I just was bored, honestly. Like, good writing is not enough alone to get me through if the actual content of it is not what I'm being very interested in. So it was 3 stars overall just because I thought that it was good in a way. Like, it wasn't for me, but I don't have extreme negative thoughts about it either. So it was one of those middle-of-the-road books where it was fine. Then the next thing that I finished in the month of August was Finley, Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano, and this was my audiobook for the month. And I kind of like reserved it on a whim. This is one that I had to put on hold because it is a popular title and I was waiting for it to come due, and it came to me in August, and I listened to it and I loved it. So in terms of like a sort of contemporary story, it's hard for me to compare genres directly to each other. I would call this a new favorite, and I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. But it's hard to compare it to like books and other genres that I read. So that's why when I say it's a new favorite for me when you're talking about like contemporary books, I'm not trying to diminish it. I just think that a lot of the things I read are so different from one another that I have to make that distinction where I just enjoy them for different reasons. So Finley Donovan is Killing It is about our main character Finley, who is struggling. She has gotten divorced. She is a struggling writer. She does have book deals, but she is struggling to actually write said books and like fulfill the promises to her agents and editors, etc. And she is obviously having a hard emotional time after her divorce, where she is at risk of losing her children if she doesn't kind of like essentially get her act together and is able to support them the way that her ex-husband can financially. So she has a meeting with her editor, or sorry, not her editor, her agent, where they are discussing the idea for the book that she should be writing, and they are talking about various ways to kill someone, basically, because she writes stories like that where there's a murder, etc. And someone overhears them and thinks that Finley is a hit woman and tries to hire her to kill someone. Basically, hilarity ensues from there. But the thing is, I really loved Finley, and I really was invested in like her and her emotional struggles and her like motivations as a character, and I think that's why I loved it so much. And I did think that the book was really, really funny and entertaining, but I don't think I would have loved it on a 5-star level if I didn't really love Finley and love the characters and stuff. So yeah, it was 5 stars and it was fantastic, and I would definitely recommend it. The audiobook was also very, very good. The third thing I read in the month of August was the Discord buddy read, which was Ben's pick this month, and that is Going Postal by Terry Pratchett from the Discworld. And this is part of its own like sub-series. So this is the first one in the, I think it's just called the Moist von Lipwig series, because that is the main character's name. And Going Postal is essentially the story of this con man who is caught and is going to be hung, but he is offered like a second chance to take over the post office and essentially save the post office from like being decrepit and old and like doesn't work anymore. So it's not a very desirable job, but it's basically that or be executed. So he's gonna revive the post office, and that is where the title Going Postal comes from. And this book is so funny. I also gave this 5 stars. This is definitely a favorite Discworld book for me, because while I love the City Watch series and I have like varying enjoyments with those, and like a lot of those are 5 stars for me as well, this has a refreshing like singleness to the narrative where we're following one character and he is interacting with the same city that we've seen in these other series, but from a completely different perspective. And there's a lot of commentary on like corporate greed and corruption, and I like all of Terry Pratchett's books have that slightly different like commentary with a capital C, and I loved what was going on in this one. Plus it was just hilarious, and it had a great like supporting cast of characters. I loved all of them, and yeah, this is definitely something that I could see myself rereading, especially because while you could continue with the series, I also feel like you could read this as a standalone if you wanted to. So next up, we have a book that I am very, very proud of because it represents the end of a very long journey for me, for anyone who embarks on it, and that is A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, the 14th and final book in Wheel of Time. And so I, of course, will have a video coming for this. I made extensive notes while I was reading this about my thoughts. Let's just say it's going to be a very long video. It's likely going to be split into 2 parts. I'm kind of waiting to film it until I actually have time to sit down. It will be coming in September, like I'm confident about that, but I don't have time yet to like really dive into my full review for this and thoughts. So it's also just, it's hard to react to something like this that's a capstone on such a massive series. Before I go any further, I did give this 5 stars. In my opinion, the series as a whole is well worth it. I would never fault anyone for DNFing this series because I like, you can't ask somebody to read 14 books in order to think it's good. But what I will say is that if you're someone who really, really enjoys the earlier books, and that's key, if you're really enjoying yourself already, but find yourself struggling with the slog, like I'm sure many people do, and I didn't struggle too much, I did with Crossroads of Twilight, but if you're that person, that's who I would say, like, it's worth it to finish the series. Because in my opinion, after you read the whole series, it becomes really clear why the slog is the slog. It's like, we could have had this series in like probably 2 fewer books and kept a pace through the whole thing, but instead the slog was 4 books and it slows right down. And like, you have like 3 eras. You have like the first era, then you have the slog, and then you have where everything is wrapped up. And it's like, you're getting back to what you loved about it earlier, except it's even better than it was earlier, because now we have all of this character development and societal development and plot threads to work with and to bring them back together. And it's super satisfying, and I was really, really impressed. I've said a couple times now to various people, I don't know if I've said it on the channel, but I feel like even though it's sad that Robert Jordan didn't get to finish this series himself, Brandon Sanderson, in terms of how well he does endings, was the perfect choice for this. Because he in particular did such a fantastic job of juggling everything that needed to be juggled and giving characters their payoffs and giving plot threads their proper payoffs. And yeah, I was really impressed with it. So once again, I will have a quite extensive video coming on this, so you can look forward to that if you are one of those people who watch my spoiler chats. I do really appreciate it. Next up, we have my August patron book pick that was picked by Victor and Andres. So I can't remember who won. I think it was Andres that won, but they had both picked the 5th season. So the 5th season was my August patron pick, and they gave me the motivation that I needed to actually start this series, because I have had this book on my shelf for quite some time now, always thinking that I intended to read it. I mean, same old story everyone is familiar with. You're like, yeah, I need to read that soon. But you say that about like 100 books, and there's not actually 100 books that you're gonna read soon. So sometimes you just need a kick in the butt. And other people picking this for me was what I needed. So I obviously have heard a lot about the 5th season and N.K. Jemisin, because she is of course very well respected, deservedly so, in the book community, and a lot of people love this series. And so I also loved this book. I really, really liked the unique narrative framing and what N.K. Jemisin was doing with the way she was bringing her plot threads together. And she has this really, really interesting combination of writing that is beautiful but also blunt. When she is writing simpler and more bluntly, she's doing it on purpose, and you can tell that she can do really beautiful and lyrical prose. And I really, really liked when she showed some of that throughout. I liked the world. The world was really, really bleak. The magic system is really interesting, and there's a lot of commentary here about oppression and slavery in terms of how the magic users are treated in this society. And there's so much to dig into and to really, really love about this. And ultimately, initially upon finishing it, honestly, I gave it 5 stars. And now I have edited that to 4.5 stars, because I still really enjoyed it and thought that it was really engaging and compelling, and I read it really fast because I was enjoying it so much. What I've realized is that I didn't have 100% of the emotional attachment and response that I could have had, and it's a book that I just read more recently than this that is 5 stars that I finished, and I was crying and laughing, and I didn't even know what I was doing, and I was like, okay, this is an emotional response to a book. I didn't feel close to that when I finished the 5th season, so I decided to edit it to 4.5 stars, because even though I thought it was great, it didn't have that X factor, but I'm really excited to continue with the series, and I did think that this was really, really awesome, and I'm grateful for my patrons picking it for me. So next up is an ebook that I read, and it was actually an ARC from NetGalley that was approved for me in exchange for a review, which I did post on Goodreads, and that is for The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And this one is a book, it came out on August 23rd. And so I originally had wanted to read it before the publication date because that's what I generally like to do and to get my review out beforehand. But because of all our travel, I didn't manage to do that. I did read this during our journey to the airport on the train and then on the plane itself, but that was after publication. And so this was a really, really sweet, heartwarming story, and I really enjoyed it. So I gave this 4 stars, and it's basically the story of our main character, Mika Moon, and she is part of this, she lives in Britain, and she is part of this group of witches that meets every 3 months or so in various secret locations, and their main focus is that they need to stay apart from one another and communicate as little as possible so that there is no chance of discovery, because if people discover them, that would be very bad for them. And so witches kind of live solitary lives because they can't really count on each other for support, but they also can't really tell people in their lives the whole truth about them. There aren't very many people who know our main character very well. And then she gets this interesting message from some people who see her online and think that she is a real witch and basically want her to come tutor some young witches. But this turns into a really, really heartfelt found family kind of story, and I really, really liked the way that this was done, and there was a romance in here that I really enjoyed. Each of the 3 young witches have individualistic, vibrant personalities, and I loved them. And I said in my review that this really kind of gives me House in the Cerulean Sea vibes, except with witches, and in my opinion, it does some of the inclusivity messaging a little bit better, but I still adored the children in House in the Cerulean Sea, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. So I gave it 4 stars, and I think that it is just a really, really nice read if you're looking for something cozy and positive that will give you warm and fuzzies inside. And it's coming up to witchy season, as in the fall, so this is probably the perfect time to read this if you want to. The final thing that I read in the month of August was actually a bit of an impulse purchase when me and Ben were in London, and I gave it 3.5 stars, and that is The Guest Cat by Takashi Hiride. Okay, according to a pronunciation website, it is Takashi Hiride, and this is a little novella about a Japanese couple in their 30s that live in this quiet cottage outside of Tokyo in the suburbs, and they basically have this kind of solitary relationship where they're both very absorbed in their work, but this cat from next door starts coming to visit them, and it kind of brings some light back into their lives, and they really enjoy this little guest cat. And this is very much a slice of life type of story, and introspective, and it is very reflective of a time period that I'm not really familiar with, which is Tokyo in the late 1980s / into 1990. And so I think that there's probably some cultural significance here that I don't totally grasp. I did enjoy this, but I think that I came away with a very unclear message about what the book was supposed to be about, and I think that took away from my enjoyment a little bit. I know that some people can really like that, but I knew what I thought the book was about, and then the ending kind of muddled everything again. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It was a very quick, cute little read, and I really enjoyed the cat. But aside from that, it wasn't a standout. So I guess I ended on a little bit of a bland note there, since I didn't really have anything emphatic to say about the guest cat. But that is it. Those are the 7 things that I read in the month of August. I still think that it was a pretty good reading month. I had a fair few 5 stars, even though I had a couple of like 3.5 stars. It balances out. The more significant things that I read were things that I really enjoyed. So let me know down in the comments what you think, if you've read any of these books, what your favorite read from the month of August was, and please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday. And with that said, as always, I'll have my Discord, socials, and Patreon linked in the description if you're interested in any of that. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!